Hello, gatekeepers. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Tell me if I've got a 5x5. I appreciate it so much. Good to see you. I see Uncommon Belief. I see our wonderful guest tonight from the Unseen Paranormal Podcast, Mr. Eric Freeman Sims. I see Vixen Doe. I feel like that lady on Romper Room. RP. Hey, RP, how you been, honey? Henry, sending you love, darling. Scott, you too. And Chris, I see you in there. And so many people. We've got people over on Facebook. We've got people watching us on Rumble. If you're not over on Rumble, please get over there. We are watching our Tuesday night at the movies tomorrow night. And that is, I believe, The Uninvited was the vote. Is that correct, Chris? It was The Uninvited, right? I always get The Uninvited and The Innocents mixed together, but I think it's The Uninvited we're watching tomorrow. So tune in for that. That'll be great. It'll be my first time watching it. And I've heard good things about it. So we're going to try that for our ghost movie on Tuesday. 5x5. Thank you so much. Okay. So tonight we have one of our favorite guests. He's not feeling too well. So bless his heart. He's still here with us tonight. So we're going to just, encourage him on. D-Rock, I see you too, honey. Hi, honey. Good to see you. If I missed you, I'll try to catch you throughout. Tennessee, I've had the pleasure of being there multiple times. I lived in Alabama, as you know, for years. Tennessee is so beautiful. The people in Tennessee, in this area, Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, it's just different. These are neighbors helping neighbors. They're people who wave at you on your way to work. Glad to see you coming home. Just good, salt of the earth kind of people. And I love them so much. And I really miss the South so very much. There is so many hauntings and so much history in Tennessee. I can see why our next guest, and I don't know, Steve, are you ready? Give me a thumbs up when you're ready, sweetheart. So, of course, tonight is Steve's regular night on Monday. Steve Stockton, our wonderful friend of the show, and he is actually from Tennessee, and he's been on with Eric before, and it's wonderful to get them together, and I can just sit back and listen to these wonderful stories. So without further ado, let me get Steve in here so he can help me greet our guest. You ready, buddy? Yep. All right, we're good to go. There you are. I don't ever want to catch you with your pants down.
Yeah, you can't tell, but I'm not wearing any.
Okay.
No,
you know what I mean?
I'm just kidding. I got
you know what I mean.
on.
Let's get
everybody.
Yeah, our next guest. I'm not going to hold him up because he's not feeling too well tonight. So, I told him, hey, if he's got to tap out, no problem. We can always do another one too when he feels better. But just to get something in here, you and I are going to do some of the lifting because we pulled some of our favorite stories from the book, and I can't think of a better introduction than the one that he made himself. This book is hot off the presses, folks. This is it's available on Amazon. I'm going to give you all the information. It came out just in February, I believe, and it's absolutely fantastic. But I'm going to let Eric tell you about it, and we have a little promo here. If it's okay with him that I play that little promo. Is that okay? Shake your head. Okay, he said all right. So here we go. Oh, wait a minute. That's wrong. Hitting wrong buttons already. Here we go. Here we are. Small town haunts
there
and
are
legends.
Many popular stories of the paranormal in Tennessee. But what about the more uncommon and from paranormal researcher and investigator Eric Freeman Sims? Available now on Amazon, on Kindle and Kindle Unlimited, in paperback and in hardcover.
Outstanding. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Eric Freeman Sims. Hello, my friend.
Hey, Eric, how you doing?
How's it feel to go? I know, honey. Do you get some hot tea going on or something?
Yeah, I got a cough drop right now, so.
Okay. I usually put my cough drops right in the daggum tea. This is fabulous because now all of us are sitting here and we've got books on Amazon. That's incredible.
Yeah.
It really is. How does it feel to have, it's doing well too. I was looking at it today, 5 stars across the board. Tell us a little bit about it. What made you decide I'm writing this stuff down? I'm betting it's similar to mine and Steve's, but go ahead.
Yeah, for one, I share a love of storytelling the same as you two. And I think there's one of the things that made me realize there's certain parts of the country where they still don't talk about the paranormal very much. Tennessee is not one of those, especially not Middle and East Tennessee. West Tennessee, I found in my research, is still a little hush hush about it. But like Alabama and stuff, they still don't. It's still because it's so far in the Bible Belt. I guess they still don't really talk about paranormal a whole lot. And so, going into kind of carrying on the tradition of storytelling from the Appalachian Mountains, which is a huge tradition out there where Steve's from, and where Steve got a lot of his stories from. And you always hear about, Memphis and Knoxville and Nashville, all the major places in most of the states. But I'm interested in the history and the hauntings of the places that you never heard of. And in Tennessee, we're required to take a Tennessee history class. And researching this book, I learned so much more about Tennessee history that they don't teach, and a lot more interesting history than people probably pay more attention in class if they taught some of the history that I found with some of these little towns and places that was a lot more interesting Civil War history and things than what they actually teach. But yeah, it's just about carrying on the tradition of storytelling, but also teaching people some about history because the Civil War, Tennessee was a major state for the Civil War. So a lot of the book has a lot of Civil War history in it. But like I said, I was looking for the uncommon, lesser known stories of history and of the hauntings. Because a lot of these places that I picked to put in the book, I could probably write 3 more books about Tennessee small town haunting.
Right. And this one's pretty packed. This one is about what, just under 300 pages.
Yeah, about 250 pages.
And my favorite page has my name and your name on it, Steve.
Yep.
Isn't that fabulous? Thank you so much. What an honor. Thank you so much.
You for being beta readers,
mentioned in it. Yeah.
I mean, just to know that you made an impact on somebody enough to remember you, one, but to put you in their book like that, and it was just wonderful to see. And I thank you so much. It's an honor, and it was an honor to read it. And I've said it on the show several times now that I like it because it has the history. It's so important, the history. And I have a couple little quotes. I didn't get to ask you today. I grabbed a couple of little quotes from your book just to add to a couple stories. Steve picked a couple stories that he wanted to bring forward, and I picked a couple. And you can probably guess which ones we picked, because they're some of our favorites. But me, I'm always going to be drawn to the Civil War. So all through Tennessee, you got Franklin, you got Shiloh, you got so much that went down there. And I think it's so important to remember the cost of war. And when you walk those fields, it's an entirely different vibe. We have another guest, a real quick one here, but I just have to show this handsome little man right here. Look at this.
That was his half birthday last week on the 5th.
He had a half birthday. Can you believe? Look at this baby. Can you believe it?
Look at those.
Gosh, I mean,
I
know Chunky Munkin. Hello, happy birthday, baby. Happy birthday, little Tootsie Toes. Look at them little Tootsie Toes.
And,
absolutely adorable.
He
hey,
was
Nick.
watching you last night and yelling at the TV. So
was he really?
I think it was in a good way, yeah.
Was I yelling back at him? I tried to remain very calm.
No, he was helping you yell, I think.
Was he helping? He was picking up what I was putting down, more likely. But yeah, that's fabulous. First and foremost, thank you so much for that. And and it's the history, and thank you for that, because I think history is so important, and it's so important to the paranormal. And I grabbed a little quote that you said in your book. We're not going to give too much away, and part of it got cut off. Steve, you want to start early?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and read it. Throughout these pages, you will not only read many of these stories, but also included a little history. I've been a paranormal researcher and investigator for many years, and I've learned that it is important to know the history of a location. Researching history can help better understand why there is paranormal activity and may even explain some of the phenomena. Quote of Eric Freeman Sims there. Good quote.
Good quote. And it's so true. It's so true. And you, now, when you realize that, was it the history you were interested in first? Was it the ghosts? Was it the stories and the legends? And then you led to history. What route did that take?
So since I was a kid, I've always been interested in history, been a big history buff. When me and my parents would go on vacation, one of the places we went just about every year, because my parents had a friend who had a double wide trailer in St. Augustine, Florida, which is the oldest city in the United States. So much history there. And we would always go and visit all the historical places around there and learn the history. And so from a pretty young age, I got into the history of places. And then once I got into investigating as a teenager, I started understanding the importance, and also the want and the need to know. Okay, well, I experienced this. Who is this, and who were they? Who are they? Why are they here? And so it just kind of came naturally, I think, with investigating. And now, in the 20 some years I've investigating, I find it very important. And even owning my own location with the night house, of okay, understanding who's here, who am I talking to, who's trying to talk to me throughout the day at the house, but also bringing those people back to life and not letting their memories just fade away into obscurity, because a lot of these people were important in their time. They may not have done anything grand, but in their little towns and stuff, especially in a lot of the small towns in the books, a lot of these people did lots of big things to shape these small towns, and all of these small towns in total shaped Tennessee. And so knowing that history, and where not only where we come from and learn lessons from the past, but also with the paranormal, understanding, okay, why is this place, why are these people still in this place? Whether it be some big tragedy, which it doesn't take for a place to be haunted, or just because they had a love of the house and they loved to entertain, and they just were proud of what they had built and accomplished. And so they're still sticking around to share that now and want to share that now.
Mhm. Yeah, so it's so important, and I really think, it's part of the paranormal investigation. It
Yeah.
really is, and I think some of these shows. I mean, we often talk about the paranormal shows just because they're so easy to pick one out and give an example of what you're talking about. So I see a lot more shows coming out and doing the history. We have a couple of people going to the local historical society, the library, digging in, seeing what it might be. And I think once you start clicking into that and say, okay, are you Sally Mae who lived here back in such and such? Are you, and it might not be. We all know here, sitting here and in this chat, it's a wonderful chat, that it could be the guy, from a mile away, has nothing to do with the house, but it helps you sort everything and divide everything and separate. And I also think in your case, and in cases where we go into a home, we appreciate the history, whether we make it a historical landmark or we're just living there. If you're talking about the people that lived in that house for could be 50, 60 years, I think you're connecting into that energy, so you bring them back if they want to do a visitation, where I think a lot of your hauntings in Night House is that. They're not stuck. They are coming back and visiting because you guys are digging into stuff they're interested in. And I think that's so important to know about the afterlife, whatever's through that gate. That, hey, cool, even when strangers connect in, because we all talk about the love connection. When you have that loved one, you remember them, or whatever it may be, you're talking about them and you already have that connection. But here's a connection with strangers.
Yeah.
And your common thread is this house or this building or this place, and that's why history is so important. Steve, what do you think about that? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to catch you off guard.
Yeah, I agree. The history plays a lot into it, and Eric's been on my radio show before, and one of the things I found interesting about there where the night house is, there's a whole plethora, a myriad of paranormal stuff there. You've got the Kelly Hopkinsville Goblins, you've got Edgar Casey, you've got I don't know what all. There's all kinds of stuff there.
Yeah, Land Between the Lakes with the Dogmen and Bigfoot stuff.
That's close by.
Yeah.
There's just, and it's like that throughout the South, and particularly in Tennessee. There's little pockets of weirdness, high strangeness, if you will, all throughout the state, and it is in little small places. Every little holler, as my granny used to say, there's a haint in every holler, and there is. These little communities and stuff. You get out away from the cities and towns, that's where the really interesting stuff is, and it's those people's normal. They don't maybe share it outside the community, but they know the story, they know the legends. And one of the things I've done when visiting places, particularly in the South, I'll go to an old folks' home because those people know all the stories, and I'll find out where the young people are. Go to like a skateboard park or something like that, and say, "Hey, do you know where there's anything weird besides you, old man?" But it's there. The people. There's a big oral tradition in the South. People like to share the history. In fact, Jonesboro, historic Jonesboro, you have to put that historic in front of it. They like that. That's where they have the international or the world storytelling competition or event. I don't know if it's competition in October of every year. So it's just ingrained in the South to tell these stories and keep them going.
Absolutely. And we showed a little bit of the Night House there, and that is the official website that you guys put up. You
Yeah.
made that from scratch.
Yeah.
This is so go on that website, and it's the Night House, Hopkinsville, Kentucky. And
Yeah.
go on there. They have all the information about the house, a little bit of history. They have information on if you want to do tours. You're doing tours now too, right?
Yeah. We're
As
doing
well as the
historic tours as well.
paranormal.
Yeah. Yeah.
As well as paranormal investigation, and there's all kinds of different prices and options you can take, you can pick from. And I believe Eric's there when somebody's staying over, somebody's there with them, right? It's usually you.
It's me. It's all me.
It's you.
I give the
It's all you.
I'm there
It's all
when we're in
you.
the house. Yeah.
You do the jump scares like after they're trying to go to sleep. Do you just poke out the closet?
Just pull the blankets off of them and stuff like.
I don't need to. The ghosts.
Yeah, I know.
They
I
bang
know.
around enough at night and stuff.
It's funny. I was listening to you do an interview. I think it was. Oh gosh, I can't remember now. I want to say Third Eye, but I don't think that was it. It
Eye of
was.
Jupiter.
Yeah, maybe yes. And you were talking about a case, a group that came through, and they were only there for a short time, 3-4 hours, and they were picking up names. Can you tell a little bit about that?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. They were recent, about a month ago. They came in for a 7 at midnight, and I don't like, especially the short tours, like the short. They're renting the house from 7 to midnight for a paranormal investigation. So I try to give just a brief history of the house and show them around quickly, because the house is kind of a maze with 6 levels and all this other crazy stuff. So we try to show them where the trip hazards, things like that. So I try to take no more than about 15-20 minutes of their time and just give them a brief history of the house. Here are the hot spots. Here's why it's a hot spot, and go on, and then kind of let them go on their own investigation and leave them alone. So I didn't get down to specifics with this particular team. There were 3 of them, and I didn't get to specific names. And I generally call um, John B. Knight, JB Knight, because that's what he went by professionally. We have an original business card of his that says JB Knight. He never went by John. And even though that was his name, was John B. Knight. Well, I just called him JB when I was telling them about the family. And I didn't even go through all the 7 children. I just said they had 7 kids here. They all died here. They all lived here and died here. And so they come to me at the end of the night, and they said, who's John? And I said, well, they got the name John on EVP. And I said, oh, well, that's JB Knight. And I said, his name was John Bailey Knight. And I said, he had a son, John Jr. as well. And they're like, oh, really? And then they said, we got the name Ida, which Ida was the daughter who lived there her whole life. She never got married, never had kids. And she died there in 1938. And so she lived there her entire life in that house. And
she the one with the wallpaper?
Huh?
Was she the one with the wallpaper, the linoleum or something that you found, the yellow flowers? Was that Ida?
Yeah, the linoleum up in the closet. Yeah.
Yeah. When you said her name, I saw the wallpaper and I thought, okay, maybe that was her. Isn't that funny?
So when I told them that was one of the daughters, they were kind of blown away. And Ida is not like it's a common name. And that's why they were like, Ida, is that anything? They didn't expect me to say that had anything to do with the house.
Wow.
But yeah, they talked to John and Ida. So it was it was probably JB, because the father, because John Jr., he lived most of his life in Chicago and died in Chicago in 1928. So 1929. So
might not be as attached to the property as JB would be. That's for sure. Right. But I also like to say, I think that's really neat. Was this on that new equipment you were talking about? There's again, I'm not the equipment person, so I get the names all jumbled up and mixed. But the one that goes, hello. All right, that one. You were talking about a different piece of equipment that didn't have the in it.
Yeah, so they have something called a geoport or a portal. And typically on the TV shows, if you ever seen them on TV shows, they build them into the old radios. So they'll take an old radio, like a Bakelite radio or one of the old wooden radios, and they'll actually build this equipment in, so it just looks like an old radio. What it is it's a spirit box, and the spirit box cycles through very quickly. Every 300 milliseconds, it changes radio stations, and you can do FM or AM, and you can go forward or backwards. Well, the Geoport, what they did was they added 2 guitar pedals,
and one of the guitar pedals is a reverb pedal, so it causes an echo. Which
Okay.
every time you hear a voice, the reason they did that was because a lot of times when you hear voices, they're very quick, and it's hard to
Yeah.
tell what they're saying because they're so quick, and they're within that static.
Hmm.
So the reverb allows you to hear it
Mhm.
better. And then they put a noise canceling guitar pedal, and the noise canceling pedal takes out all the static, and you only hear the voices. So
That's so cool.
what it does is it cuts out a good part of the spectrum of sound, to where you just get the very middle range of where you hear voices, and it cuts out the very high pitch and the very lows, and so you get rid of that static. And so all you hear is you'll hear music because it's scanning through radio stations,
Right.
but
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 it
if you hear
doesn't
a
have that
voice,
white noise that
yeah, yeah,
because there's something in that white noise that gets all of my fibers of my being just twisted, and
yeah,
I can't be in it. And I always feel bad if I'm on investigation, I'm trying to go to another room just to move away from it so it's not as loud to me. And I don't know how people can sit with it. It just gets, I don't know if it's just me or if it's a light worker thing or it's a vibration. I don't know. But I think I would be much more comfortable with something like that, And I
yeah.
wonder if that's not what Ron Iacovetti and Lourdes is doing, because they're using the radios. They might be doing something like that or moving towards something like that. That'd be interesting to ask him next time I
Yeah,
bump into them.
they're doing something a little different. They're doing something called ITC, and I forget
Okay.
what that stands for, but it's based on research of a guy named Frank, and they
Oh,
have a
like
box
Frank's
called
box?
Frank's box. Yeah,
Okay.
that's it's a transcendental communication, um, something yeah,
It's
ITC, but
totally different.
it's different because
Uh-huh.
Frank's box is based off of certain radio frequencies and white noise. I believe it doesn't really
Hmm.
scan it. They
Hmm.
talk through the white noise itself, and
Wow.
it's a certain hertz and frequency of white noise, if I'm
Right.
not mistaken.
Which is
It's a
almost
little bit
like the
different.
movie. That's almost like the movie White Noise with oh gosh, who was in that? Chat, help me
Kevin
out here.
Kevin Bacon,
Mm,
was he in
no,
White
that
Noise?
was
No,
Stir
he
of
was in the
Echoes.
yeah, yeah.
He played Batman, so that narrows it down.
Michael Keaton.
Keaton. There we
Yeah,
go. He was in it, and
yeah,
boy,
yeah.
that ended a little creepy. But it was based on that woman. I can pull her up. I actually have a video on her somewhere, but she started probably at the age of like 65. I mean, she was older, maybe 70 even, and she started going into these mausoleums. Is that the right word, Steve? Look, I'm looking at you for cemetery directions. It's Steve started out real young hanging out in cemeteries, so I figured he would know.
Yeah.
The box with the doors on it, you can go in. It's like a room above ground. That's a mausoleum, right?
Yeah, on a grand scale, but there are family vaults that are smaller.
Okay.
Crypts,
Well,
yeah.
she would go into these things in the middle of the daggum night and sit there with a recorder, talk to people, and all by herself, and it's like, wow, that's just such a wild thing, especially this was like in the late 70s, early 80s, and she was really getting EVPs and,
Yeah,
all kinds of things, like whole sentences and stuff, and she'd sit there and talk to them. And you wonder, in this world, why can't they just write on a foggy mirror? Why can't they just make it easier? Why do we have to have all this, But it just seems different ghosts, different things. Like you could be in a big investigation and have somebody coming in on this thing and not on this one, or any
yeah,
combination of those. So I don't know that any one piece of equipment is better than the other. I think whatever you're choosing and whatever works for you, right, Steve? I mean, whether it's a pendulum or dowsing rods or any of these new tech items, it's also funny when you think about when they first started trying this communication was so far back in the day with Alexander Graham Bell and all these other ones just trying to communicate with the dead. And here we are still doing it. It's
yeah.
just it's amazing. And I think the history and everything really ties in. I think that's probably made stronger, like families to get involved in the paranormal, because maybe somebody in the family is just with the history, and then two or three other people might be into the ghost stuff.
Thomas
And I just think it
Edison.
really helps. Thomas Edison,
Thomas
yes.
Edison had a device to
Mhm.
talk with the dead, and so apparently it worked too well, and he destroyed it. I wrote a
Really?
fictional account of that I've never done anything with, but it's interesting to look into.
Wow, very interesting. All right, well, I'll tell you what, would you like Steve and I to start chucking stories at you? Because I pulled up
Yeah.
some whatchamacallits, and at the end, I'm going to ask for your favorite ones in the book. And I know it's hard to pick, but
Yeah.
you know, that one that just intrigued you or dug deeper. And I honestly, reading the book, I think you've got a couple in there that could probably be its own book if you really wanted to dig down and add
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
You know,
Definitely.
I mean, really, some of those stories are just so rich. Like you said, you could do a whole nother book just on stories, you
Yeah.
know, so like a volume 2 or something. But I think I heard you say the next one's going to be Kentucky.
I've already started the research.
Okay.
So yeah, Kentucky's the next one.
Another rich, very
Yeah.
rich in, you know, in the lore and the legends and stuff like that. And, you know, isn't it odd? I just thought of it though. It seems to me it'd be easier in the South. I was very surprised at what you said about Huntsville, but it makes perfect sense. I mean, Alabama, perfect sense that they wouldn't as much talk about it.
Yeah.
Where the Appalachians, you go up there, and it's like second, you know, it's like a sense, you know, you just know it exists. But I wonder how much research you could get done in a city like New York. You see what I mean?
Oh,
There's
yeah.
got to be so much,
Yeah.
but it's just so busy. And when you go there, I don't know when the last time you guys were ever in a city that size, like Chicago or New York or anything like that. I get so overwhelmed by the energy. It's just too much. And then
Yeah.
you're down in the mix of it where you've got these big, tall concrete buildings. You know, everything is just so man-made, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I think you get a little bit more when you start getting out into nature and you start getting into it's a little easier, you know, a little calmer. And I think if it's calmer for us, it's got to be calmer for them, you know. So there you go. All right, Steve. I think I pulled up some of yours first. Some of your ideas here. Let me see what we've got next. And there's our wonderful cover. I wanted to put this on here because I wanted you guys to know if I forgot that it is available now on Amazon. I believe you can get it free if you have
Kindle
Amazon Kindle Unlimited, and you can also get it in ebook, paperback, and hardback. Is that correct?
Yes.
There you go. See, I
And
do
here
my
soon I will
research
have
too.
I'll have the website up where people can order signed copies directly from me.
Oh, that would be great. That'd be
So-
great. And that way you'll get it too, and it's not going to Amazon because
Yeah.
people have pulled my books. You can actually look for my book, my little, you know, my little book, and it'll be on there. Somebody's selling it for $39. That's not
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
Mine,
some
I
are going for a
put
couple
mine
hundred.
on an Etsy shop. If you want to sign them, that's where to go to get mine. That was easier than trying to list them on Amazon.
Right?
I believe
Okay,
that's
now
one of yours, Cisco.
it is one of mine, and I thought it was funny to start. I had never heard of this one, and I love it. Steve, you want to do can you see it? Is it too small?
No, I can see it. The Tale of Pitty Pat Hollow. This local lore takes place in the small community of Sail Creek. The town is located between Chattanooga and Dayton on U.S. Highway 27. A lot of weird stuff on Highway 27, by
Yeah.
the way. Just outside of town in the area known as Shipley Hollow. Eric Freeman Sims.
There you go. Now, tell us about the tale of the Pitty Pat Hollow, because is this people? Is it little people? Is it because when I was reading the book, I want to tell you right now, Steve, you know what came to mind? Your story about the water sprite chasing you in the leaves.
Mm-hmm.
When I was reading this story.
Yeah,
Tell
I
us about it.
specifically asked him about this one on my radio show because
Did you?
I'd never heard of it.
Did you?
Yeah. The funny thing is my buddy, really good friend Jeremy, is from Saudi Daisy, which is in that same area. And he's like, when I first showed him the copy of the book, excuse me, he was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you put the Pitty Pat Hollow in there." He's like, "I didn't think anybody outside of that area knew about this." But that made him excited, even more excited for the book. But
Nice.
I love that reaction of like, because I wasn't expecting anybody to be like Pitty Pat Hollow. I can't,
Yeah.
But no, this story reminded me of the fairies type creatures. So the very first story that shows up with this, the very first legend and tale with this, is there's a bridge that goes across Sail Creek, and in this area, yeah, and that bridge has been there since the 1800s, and maybe not that particular bridge, but the bridge has been there since 1800s.
Right.
And the first tale goes there was a lady and her children, 2 children that were they were on a horse and buggy, and they're going home late in the evening, and all of a sudden these little creatures came out that looked like imps or goblins, and spooked the horse. The horse took off
it overturned the wagon and really injured the mother, and it kind of threw the kids out. So in her dying breaths, she watched these little creatures drag her children off under the bridge toward the water. And ever since then, people claim that you can park your car on the bridge or you can walk out to the bridge at night. And the reason they call it Pity Pat Hollow is because it sounds like pity pat feet of these little imps coming after you. And other people claim to see them throughout the years as well. Even up to now, teenagers go out there. Of course, it's a local legend. Teenagers go out there in the middle of the night. But there are some adults who I found stories of who have gone out there just recently in the past few years who have heard the sound of the pity pat. They didn't see anything, but that was enough to run them off.
I bet.
Yeah, it's supposed to be these little impish fairy type creatures that drag people under the bridge and they're never seen again.
Wow.
Also, there's a lot of wrecks and things like fatal wrecks reported, not necessarily on the bridge, but in that stretch of that highway. And like Steve was saying, that highway is really odd anyway. There's lots of weird things around that highway. But just within like a mile stretch of where that bridge is, there's lots of weird accidents and things.
Right.
Lots of animals that get run over. And you're out in the
Almost
middle of
like it's
woods,
taking sacrifices.
Yeah.
You
But
know?
just something's drawn it, death to that area.
And there are plenty of highways and places like that. Steve can vouch for that. I mean, it could very well be some kind of, history on that property. If you could get back to, go way
Yeah.
back, if you could find journals and things like that, people might say, hey, we weren't supposed to build here. Or some crazy native chief came through and said we were nuts for building a house here and that we're all going to die.
Right.
I mean, because you usually find something like that. But pulling you under the bridge, now this is creepy. It reminds me of an old movie. Has nothing to do with the bridge. It has to do with, I think, like an old Ben Franklin potbelly stove or something like that. And it was called Don't Be Afraid of the Dark. And these goblins lived in this stupid thing. And this woman kept hearing this pity pat, the feet running, the little, that kind of thing. And I think it was once it got dark, I think she had a camera or something, and she would hit the button and the flash would go. And when the flash would go, you would see them for just a minute and they'd recoil. But eventually they got her. I think it was Kim Darby played the role. But it reminds me of that. And all those things creep me out. You're not going to find me getting out of the car and seeing if you hear the feet. But I'm telling you, Steve, it reminded me of your story.
Yep.
It really did. They're out
Very
there.
similar. No, they're out there. As you say, there's all kinds of stuff out there.
There's all kind of shit out there, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And I believe, and again, I'm not a big on the, I don't know a lot about the lore of the fairies. We just did a couple of shows. I'm listening to Steve's. Steve's got a great series going on with that, so I'm learning through that. But again, it's all connected. It doesn't really matter if you're talking about a ghost in New York or a ghost, in Taiwan. I mean, the aspects are going to be similar. So I think that's what's going on with the fairies. But very interesting story, and I had never heard it before, so that was a new one for me.
And there's a lot more in the book than that's just a cliff notes.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Get the book, read the stories. It's great. But yeah, creepy. And you're getting pulled up under there. Maybe there's a portal under there, Steve.
Could be.
A
lot of haunted bridges. There's just about every community down there, they've got a bridge that's either a crybaby bridge or a lady in white that walks the bridge or a vanishing hitchhiker on or near the bridge. All kinds of things. But a lot of times a bridge, and the lore is, I think, that a ghost can't cross moving water, so they have to stay on one side of the bridge or the other. Scouts Hollow in Rockwood. I don't know if you've ever heard of that one, Eric, but where a bunch of Boy Scouts drowned back in the 20s.
Welcome, Lisa.
And if you go down there, you on a bicycle or motorcycle, you can feel like somebody get on behind you. But I've also heard that same story up near Straw Plains, that there was 3 ponds, and if you rode by those, by the time you got to the second pond, I think it was, if you had to be on a mule or a horse, you'd feel somebody get on the back, but by the time you got to the third pond, they'd come off. And that was something that happened during the Revolutionary. Somebody was murdered and put in the pond. So all kinds of water lore with these ghosts.
And then you also have all these old fairy tales. Like, I don't know who started, I don't know whether it was the Brothers Grimm or Hans Christian Andersen that did the Billy Goat Scruff. And who's that trip trapping on my bridge? You got the troll under the bridge, the all that, the gremlins under the bridge. So these all had to stem from something. you
Yeah.
know, that passed down. But that could be it. I don't know what it is about bridges, but man, I don't
I've
like them.
heard I've heard on a few podcasts of some real witnesses talking about seeing trolls.
Yeah.
This one lady, I think they were swimming, and they were on further down from this bridge, but they weren't drinking or anything. They're just out swimming in the summer, and she talks about she saw this little troll looking thing that was about 6 inches tall under the bridge, and like it had a little house and a door, and like it just appeared, and she saw
Wow.
it, and she got the attention of her friends, and they all watched it for like 30 minutes. This little thing coming out gathering sticks and all this stuff on the
Oh
beach, and
man.
then it just went in the door, and the door in it disappeared. And they said they never went swimming there
Whoa.
again.
I can
But they
bet.
said they called it the troll under the bridge.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. I'm not sure if it's in Texas where the ghost children
it is.
push the car. Is it?
There
San
is one,
Antonio.
yeah.
San Antonio.
Yeah.
Is that the
But
one where they put
tracks.
baby powder on the back to get the
Yeah.
Yeah,
handprints?
and
Yeah.
the car will actually, you put it in neutral, it'll actually roll uphill, or it appears to anyway.
We have
That's
one here at Gravity Hill. That's like an
yeah.
optical illusion there. But I think there was something with the kids where it was a school bus or somebody got hit and they're trying to push you over the track so you don't get hit by the
Yeah.
train and stuff. I'm like, see, I just, testing that stuff, it just makes, it just
The-
seems mean to me.
The thing that's interesting about
get
that
'em crossed.
story and about some of the story, a couple of the stories that are in my book, is they're tropes. Don't know if it ever happened somewhere, exactly what the story says. San Antonio claims that that's where that first happened, by a bus load of kids getting hit. But there's plenty of other cities across the United States, including bigger cities and smaller cities, that claim the same story. And even like in Tennessee, Sensabaugh Tunnel is one of the ones that they claim you'll get the handprints in the back of your car if you park in the tunnel, and things like that. So it's kind of a trope. So don't know if it's just an urban legend or
Mhm.
what. There's a few of those. The lady in white, like Steve was talking
Mhm.
about with the bridges and stuff.
Mhm.
A lot of those they're kind of everywhere. Even in other countries, you'll get some of those same stories of the bride to be that never was, or whatever, type of stuff.
Yeah, it seems
So
to be a
it's
lot of
interesting.
bridges. People getting hung off of, Saks Bridge. I mean, I don't know what it is about bridges that just draw people. And then you
Yeah.
got the ghost of Billy Joe McAllister because he jumped off the Tallahassee Bridge.
Yeah.
Right.
So sure enough, he's probably pulling people underneath the. Who knows? But that's where everything stems from. The first story, and then bam, here comes the next, and the next, and the next. It's just love it. There's so many stories. Okay, here's another one. I think this one was one of Steve's favorite. You want to get that one, Steve?
Yeah, I made a video about this once upon a time. Spearfinger, or Ulunta, the legend of Spearfinger, or Ulunta, comes to us from the Cherokee of East Tennessee and West North Carolina. Spearfinger is described as an old witchy woman with stone-like skin and a long, sharp pointer finger that resembles a spear. It's made of obsidian, and she
Yeah.
likes to cut your liver out and eat it, particularly children. And she can disguise herself as members of your immediate family. So it was kind of told as a cautionary tale that if anybody was away for too long, when they came back, to look at the palm of their hand, because Spearfinger had her heart in the palm of her hand, and you could tell that wasn't really your granny or whatever because of the heart. But again, it was to keep the kids close to the campfire at night.
Yep. And that goes along with the legend of the mimics and demons that try to pretend to be something. There's going to be something off. So what did you find? The story was great in the book. What stuck out to you on this one, Eric?
The story about how she kind of tortured the natives for quite a while, but they ended up outsmarting her. And at first, they didn't know her heart was in the palm of her hand, and they actually set up a trap for her and lured her out in the woods. And because she thought somebody was out there alone, so she came out there, and they actually made this trap, real deep trap with the spikes at the bottom, like people do for animal traps, and they covered it up with leaves. And so when she walked over it, she fell down in there. And the spikes didn't hurt her because her skin was hard as stone. And they shot at her with arrows for hours, and nothing was hurting her because the arrows wouldn't pierce her skin. And finally, she was jumping up
Hey,
out
Mike.
of the pit. She couldn't quite reach them, but she was jumping up and scratching them and things with the spear finger. And finally, one of them saw that she had a soft spot in her hand, and they were shooting arrows at her, and one of them hit the heart with an arrow, and that was
Oh,
her demise.
that was it. She says, I'm melting. I'm melting. And to answer your question, Hanging, I would, if I was to have to pick a yes or no, I would say no. I would say no. I don't think Skinwalker is something totally different.
Yeah, that's
It is such a dark, and it's Navajo, yeah. And it's such a dark type of witchcraft. You got a little bit of, what you might consider hoodoo in there. You wouldn't call it that, but it's similar. But your final act is you have to kill somebody who is so precious to you that it's like the worst sacrifice that you could do, and you have to do it without feeling. And when you can get to that point, you're so evil, and that's what pushes them over and gives them that extra dark magic. So there's nothing. People talk about this. There's a young man now talking a lot about it on YouTube and stuff like that. And eventually something's gonna happen, because this is just Skinwalkers isn't something you mess with, as far as I'm concerned. And I don't think Spearfinger. I think Spearfinger might have even been a combination of maybe a mimic, maybe something along those lines. Steve, is there elementals can do that too, right? There's a few out there that can pretend to be
and mimic and change, and that happens a lot where people will report hearing a woman crying or screaming, or a baby crying, coming out of a cave or coming out of a place where there's not supposed to be anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the reason there's a huge difference between the cultures too, with the Skinwalker being Navajo, with the Cherokee and the Swanee, they were matriarchal societies, so they were ran by women, and Cherokee and Swanee were, and your Skinwalkers tend to be your medicine men and shaman, and the Cherokee and Shawnee did not have medicine men or shamans, and like I said, they were ran by women, by the wise women of the tribe. Even though they did have chiefs and things like that, but the women ran the tribe, and they had, they did medicine and stuff, but it wasn't magic. Like out west with the Navajo and a lot of the other tribes, when they talk about magic, when they talk about medicine, they're talking about magic.
It's magic. Yeah. Is a totally different thing. And I totally agree with Eric. And there is a magic. I hate to use the word magic. There's an element of spirituality that's just next level, and you could start to imagine that's magic if you think magic isn't just tricks and sleight of hand and illusion, and you consider some magic to be closer to manipulating energy. Then you're starting to get more into what Eric's talking about. Does that make sense? Because some magic, you would think a magician is just performing tricks and illusions, whereas in the native culture, you're actually doing it. Does that make sense? So I didn't want you to get confused by the word magic. All right, that's a good one, Spearfinger. I've never, that one gives me there's so much more to that one. It just gives me the creeps. I liked this one a lot, and it's the Greenbrier, and I love it when they take an old building. I'm trying to figure out what building they use. It must have been the one in the middle, because this picture is from how far back, Eric?
I believe the 1930s.
30s? I was going to say 36-ish, something like those. And it's amazing how these people went up and built these great big, so many different ones were like the salt bath saunas and the spas and the retreats and those kind of things. I think, and I love it when some of them get saved. There was a great one. We called it the Lodge up on Montesano Mountain out there in Alabama. And they did the same thing. And I saw it in ruins. And then I saw it once they made it similar to this. It's not a restaurant. It's more of a venue, a wedding venue, a meeting venue, something like that. But it's just absolutely gorgeous. That's what it reminds me of. Can you see that one, Steve?
Yeah. The last known spirit is that of a grumpy older man. He is often seen sitting in the back corner of the restaurant by himself. If the dining room gets too crowded or loud, he gets quite angry and makes his presence known in various ways. Now, that's the Greenbrier in Gallenberg at Pittman Center, Eric.
Yeah.
It's got several ghosts. Another one that I'd made a video about is Lydia, the lonesome ghost. Jilted bride hung herself. And she causes a lot of disturbances there. And I think part of that is, I don't know if they still have it or not, but when I was there years ago, they had a thing on the menu called Lydia's Chocolate Suicide for Two. And disrespecting her like that, no wonder she's upset.
Yeah.
They
Wow.
couldn't bury her in a Christian grave because the way she took herself out. So they buried her off in the woods in an unmarked grave. And her ghost came and visited the caretaker, I think it's caretaker, night after night after night, till finally he knew where the grave was, went and put a tombstone up for her, and then supposedly that helped quieten her down. Some legends that I heard.
Yeah. Yeah. She was left to the altar by her groom, and their honeymoon spot was the Greenbrier, and that's why she went back to the lodge and hung herself there off the staircase. And then the story goes that a couple of days later they found him dead, either mauled by a wild animal or something. There was a reason why he didn't show up. He didn't just abandon her. There's also the reason I put the picture of the pool in there is because there's a story of a little kid that drowned in the pool, and his spirit hangs out in the restaurant as well, under tables and messing with people's feet and their pocketbooks and things, their purses.
One of the scariest stories I heard from their family was dining, and the little girl kept pointing and laughing at something. And they said, "Oh, what are you laughing about?" And she said, "The silly lady on the stairs said she's got a braid around her neck and she's making all kinds of faces." And I think it's funny. She was seeing the recreation or the hanging, the actual hanging of Lydia hanging
Oh,
from the
man.
staircase. So the lady's choking and her eyes are bugging out and her tongue's
Yeah.
lolling out and stuff. Little girl thought it was funny. She didn't realize what she was seeing.
Wow. Wow.
And this is a little kid that had no knowledge of the history of the place, but had that experience. That's whatever type that is of the word replays. I can't think of the word right off the top of my head.
Yeah. And the older
It's a
gentleman in the quote
great
there,
validation. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah. The older gentleman in the quote there, they believe he's the one in the kitchen that throws things around.
Hey, Lee.
When he gets angry, he'll throw things off the top of the fridge and off of shelves and things.
Uh-oh. I lost you.
It's got a creepy feel to it. It does. I've been there. It's changed hands a lot of times too. I don't know if that's because of the haunting or just whatever, but
Just keep going, guys, if you can hear me. Something's going nuts with StreamYard again. Can you guys hear me? I guess not. Okay, hold 1 second.
She all froze up.
yeah, she looks frozen. I could hear her, but now
Yeah.
it looks like she's frozen
Yeah.
and she's muted. So
All right, can you hear me now?
yeah,
I'm
I
gonna
can hear you, but
I'm
you
gonna
look
back
frozen.
out. I'm gonna have to try to back out of here because my whole screen again. Wait a minute, a little bit's coming back. A little bit's coming back.
Yeah, you're
Whole
frozen up.
Screen went black. Steve, I just don't even know. This damn StreamYard.
This happens on a lot of different shows that we've been on.
I just can't even
Remember when we were on
understand.
with Sarai on Where'd the Road Go, and he lost control of his board at the radio station there, and we talked for about 2 hours before we figured out he couldn't interact with us.
Oh, yeah, that was something. All right, I'm trying to get out of here. It's coming back like piece by piece. I got tiny little squares here. I'm gonna see if I can hit the right thing to.
I've been drinking a lot of water, so I'm gonna run to the restroom real quick. I'll be right back.
Go ahead, baby. Go ahead.
Well, how's everybody doing tonight? Let's see. Sir Brian Bowden is here. Chris Van Pool, how are you doing? Vixen Doe, RP Skaza, Hanging AZ. Lee from First Floor Audio just popped in. Jim's Camera at Dawn, how you doing? Let's see. Anybody I missed? Very well, Paranormal. Lindsay, how are you? Lisa Ray, good to see you over here. She comes to my channels too. And just wanted to let everybody know that my radio show is still on the Clyde Lewis Ground Zero radio network, but we're moving to another broadcasting platform. So the show's on hiatus right now. It's going to double the number of radio stations, terrestrial stations that we're on to about 400. But in the meantime, I'm taking some of my best favorite episodes and playing those on my Tales Untold channel on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights. So, and there we've got Cisco back.
I'm
Hey,
kind
Scott's
of
life.
part of the way back. Hey, Bri. Hey, everybody. Sorry about that, guys.
I
That
think I
wasn't
said
me
hi to
that
everybody.
time. All right, let me see if I can get my
I tried
slides
to hold
back.
it in the road while you were gone.
You did.
There,
I
Cisco.
heard every word, baby. You did great. You did great. I appreciate it. All right, let me see if I get my slides back on here. Gosh, crazy. I hate
Hello,
that.
Catherine.
So you're going to double your price, and then your all your stuff is going to go haywire. Okay, there we go. Greenbrier, got it. That was really interesting because I was taking that little tour. I went in there with that little like I was showing you walk in, and I was looking at the menu. I mean, like, holy mackerel. 7 years ago, 2 crab cakes and a beer would cost you $46. So if you're going, you better bring the cash. Bring
It
the
ain't
money.
cheap.
It
But
ain't
it's good
cheap. Hey
food.
Jim.
It's good
Hey,
food.
hey Jim, welcome in. Now, who do you think the old guy is? Do you think it was somebody? Does anybody know the old sad guy in the back?
I didn't find anything. I couldn't find anything about who he may be
Yeah,
at all. But yeah, he hangs out in there.
interesting. Let's see what our next one is. Sorry that happened, guys. Just around here, you just hang on till I hit the right
Joys
button.
of doing anything live.
Yep. All right. It's a beautiful place, though. I love anything with
It is. It's
stone and
wonderful.
stuff like that. I'm glad they did something with it. This one was always one of my favorites, and I just think it's so neat. It's the tragedy. Steve, help me with these words.
Nakatula and Conestoga is how I would say it.
All right. In Athens, on the grounds of the Tennessee Wesleyan Wesleyan University, once stood an oak tree and a hackberry tree. Tell us a little bit about this one.
So they were forbidden lovers. The Conestoga, he got injured, and a native tribe took him in and brought him back to good health. And in that process, he fell in love with the chief's daughter. And the chief liked him and blessed the marriage, but the other men in the tribe did not like him marrying the chief's daughter since he was a white man. And so they invited him out for a hunting trip, and he went out hunting with them, and it was actually an ambush, and he was really badly injured, and Nakatula figured out what they were doing and ran to find him to try to save him, and she got there too late, and he was dying, and so she ended up killing herself, but he had a hackberry seed. She had a hackberry seed in her hand, and he had an acorn in his, and they buried them. When the chief found out, he buried them together that way, and the two trees grew together in a V, and one trunk was the hackberry, and the other trunk was the other tree, and it represented their love, their forever love, eternal love. And the tree actually was there until they had to cut it down due to storm damage. I have a picture of the tree, in the book there, the
There it
hackberry and
is.
the oak tree, and they grew together, and that's not a usual thing for those two trees to get along, especially grow together like that.
For that long, too. And I believe that when one tree went, the other one went not long after. Like
Yeah,
it could not
they
live
both.
without
Yeah,
each other.
yeah, and
Yeah.
now the statues that you see there are in the place of where the trees were.
Tried to get it from both angles. I just think it's so nice that they put that there and have the story. We have a similar, well, actually, it's nothing like this one. It just has natives in it. But in Kennedy Park here in Asbury Park, New Jersey, we have a story of, now this one's, very sad. This one, a young girl, I believe she was 12, was sold to a chief. It was Lenny Lenape, which is part of what I am. And that was something that happened a lot, trust me. And, for pacts within tribes, just like, think of it like, what's that show? Game of Thrones. You're going to marry in so you could be part of this kingdom. So we now have a little bit of what you have and blah, blah, blah. And we're allies and that kind of thing. That's what this was. But he was older. and he was really gruff. And Asbury Park is right on. So this park is about 3/4 of a mile from the ocean. So where their village was is now where this park is. Kennedy Park has a big statue of John F. Kennedy in it. That's why it's Kennedy Park. And every once in a while, you'll see the chief coming through looking for this girl. And you'll see the girl on the beach by the jetty. And the jetty is these great big black rocks that jut out into the ocean and kind of breaks up, the shore and, the breakers and stuff. Now, the story is that they used to go every day out clamming. And that's what they would do. And they would come in town and they would sell the clams and that kind of thing. And she was kind of his, let's put it this way, she did a lot of the work. And he went out there one day and came back without her. And they said at this point in time, she was kind of rebelling back, like, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to put up with this mess. And the next day after they had that big fight that a lot of people heard, they both went to the beach and only he came back. And it said that he had killed her. He died not long after that under suspicious condition, situation. And they think that the townspeople gathered up and killed him for killing the girl. So they haunt both, but they never are seen together. So it's so wild the way all that happened, and actually both of them be seen. So and he's pretty distinctive, and it's not just they're seeing a native and they're putting that together. He's pretty distinctive. There's actually drawings and illustrations and stuff of him, and that's what they're seeing. So that's kind of, there's a lot of those real deep stories like that with native hauntings. And I've actually had people say, how can we never see ghosts of natives or ghosts of, people from way back in, in the day? It's all, recent and stuff like, and that's just not true. It's just not true. There's Roman soldiers. There's all kind of, our friend, Rob Guttrow was talking to a monk that was there for like 1,500 years or something, wasn't it, Steve? I mean, it was well over 1,000 years.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And then there was a place in England where in the guy's basement, he kept seeing Roman soldiers. And again, he searched into the history and found out that was the old road back during Romans' time, was at basement level or cellar level. And that was the residual haunting because he just see him marching by.
Right. Anything else on this one, honey? Or there's more in the book. I know there is, but don't give it all away. Don't give it all away.
It's a long story in the book,
but it's really good. It's really great. And if you think about that, they each had a different seed in their hand. And, I can see natives doing that. And the fact that they grew together like that, it's just neat. It's just really neat. And I like the story. Very good. Okay. We got to stop here. For me, because now this is one, believe it or not, I've never been to this battlefield. I've been to so many, and I don't know how I missed it. And the last I had heard, they were having a struggle. So let me ask you that first: Are they still losing large sections of this? Are they still doing, save Shiloh, that kind of thing? I know Antietam went through that too. Are they doing okay here?
Yeah, I think they're good now. I think
good.
Through that whole campaign, they've stopped.
Good.
Taking land. Yeah.
It's really important. It's really important for us to remember this stuff. Civil War battlefield and the home of the Battle of Shiloh, a 2-day bloody battle which began on April 6, 1862. Steve, you want that one?
Yeah, I got it here. Shiloh National Military Park. Quoting Eric here, most of us in the paranormal field believe that the more trauma and death there are, the more likely a place is to be haunted. If that's the case, battlefields like Shiloh are among the most haunted places in the world. With over 20,000 deaths in 48 hours, it would be hard to think that much death and trauma would not leave a lasting mark on the blood-soaked land. End quote.
Yeah, Shiloh is an amazing place. One of the things that people may know of or have heard about Shiloh, one of the more famous legends is Old Green Eyes. Is a legend that is around there, and they have the Green Eyes Festival now.
Do they?
Started a few years back. Yeah, it's going on again this year in October, I believe.
We all want to say
Hey,
hi to
Brian.
Roger. Eric gets hit with this every time. He'll come on and say, I love you, Eric. How's your husband? I love you. Tell Roger said I love him. Give him big hugs.
He's
And
pretty awesome.
I just found his. I was digging through looking for somebody today I had to send a message to, and I went into my messenger is really crazy because I have like 3 different pages or 4 different pages for different things
Yeah.
that I do, and a lot of birthday messages got. So Roger wished me happy birthday today, and I said thank you today. Only like 2.5 months after the fact. That's how buried my messages were. So if you ever send me a message, I'm not ignoring you. I probably didn't see it, and I apologize. But everything just moves. It's so weird the way my messenger works. But go right ahead, sweetheart. Sorry to interrupt you.
But yeah, Old Green Eyes is one of the more famous legends. I did not put it in the book. There's another story that is actually a true story that I wish I would have put in the book, and it's one of those things that I just it got lost in the mix for some reason. But there's a story about a lot of the soldiers who were wounded in the middle of the night, and a lot of the dead soldiers laying around in the middle of the night. This green glow started coming out of their wounds, of the dead soldiers and the living soldiers, and it caused this green kind of haze in the air. But it's like this bright neon green just started coming out of their wounds. The majority of the soldiers that were wounded, that weren't too badly wounded, ended up surviving and not getting infections or having to have amputations or anything. And this is true. And what they figured out is that there's this bioluminescent bacteria that actually saved their lives.
What?
That it was in the environment and in the water. And when it got in the wounds, it displaced all the bad bacteria and killed off the bad bacteria and actually saved a lot of their lives from infection. And back then, they
Wow.
didn't have antibiotics or anything. They would just
Right.
amputate, hope for the best. But a lot of the soldiers that were wounded there, more soldiers that were wounded there survived than other battlefields because of the bioluminescent bacteria. But it caused this green glow on the battlefield from the dead
Wow.
soldiers' wounds as well as the living soldiers, and kind of this green haze. And that's where they think green eyes comes from. But that's a true
Wow.
story that really happened, and a lot of them survived because of this bacteria, this beneficial bacteria.
That's incredible. That's
Yeah.
absolutely incredible. And again, these battles were just so brutal. I mean, this is
Yeah.
like, where you talk about across the Chattanooga River, battle. I mean, they were all over Tennessee, these battles. But, like the water would run red. Do you have any idea how much blood has to be in the water for it to run red?
Yeah.
And that they could cross the river just stepping on bodies.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, just you have to understand that the cost of war is so monstrous. I try to bring it up every chance I get because I honestly believe anybody that's signing for war should have to send their kids first, because they would be making better decisions when they're removed from that personal emotional contact and that sacrifice. You can't decide other people should go.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely ridiculous. I can see I have no problem if somebody's coming up on my property. I'm on the porch. You know what I mean? It's so quick it wouldn't even be. But this ludicrous chess game where the people moving the pieces don't have to. You know what I mean?
Outside, not a mind. Yeah.
They should have to go visit a place like this and walk among the tombstones or whatever to get the idea of the cost of war. It's not, freedom isn't free. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So I always try to remember those wonderful soldiers. The intestinal fortitude of the American soldier is just bar none. It really is. Look at how beautiful this land is. Absolutely gorgeous. Tennessee is just, in the fall, there's just nothing like it. This one is just about a ghostly figure, but I grabbed this. Some people encounter a ghostly figure walking the roads, as so many tourists have reported seeing within the park grounds. These sightings of the unknown man recount that his face is indistinguishable and that the potential apparition appears after a few minutes. Then many may suddenly reappear out of nowhere. So it's just popping in and out of its, the veil or wherever it's, wherever it's vibrating. You know what I mean? It's always, I think they're always there. It's just that they manifest into. So many soldiers died at the peach orchard, and their lifeless bodies lay sprawled beneath the trees as the battle raged around them. This unknown man may be one of the fallen soldiers who lost his life under the blooming peach trees. So I can imagine them laying there looking up at all these beautiful blooms, and it's just, wow, this was really, Shiloh has a lot to it. It really does. You know.
Yeah, and shallow. You were talking about the water running red.
Mhm.
There's a pond that the water still turns red in the summer, and many people believe that it's from the blood of the soldiers and of horses. And the story goes that the pond was pretty much so full of bodies, people's bodies, and of horses from the cavalry that you couldn't even see the water, and it was just a big red patch. And so now the water still turns red, and many people believe that it's the reminder of how many people died there and gave their lives. And of course, the scientific, they want to say that it's red algae, but I don't know. So
Yeah,
that's one of
yeah.
the things that happens at shallow.
Yeah, it is. It's quite amazing, and everybody's loving this story about the bioluminescence will eat all back
Yeah.
bacteria. Yeah, and you wonder where did that come from? Did it dissipate over time? The whole green eyes thing on top of it, but I think from the accounts, and correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, I think green eyes was actually taking the energy out of the soldiers while
Yeah.
this other bioluminescence
And
was
it's been
healing.
cited in other places, and in Georgia at I can't think of the name of the
Chickamauga.
battle. Chickamauga, yeah, they've got a green eyes down there, and it was seen floating amongst the dead and dying while the battles were going on. So whatever that was, it was already there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Between trolls pulling you under the bridge and all this other stuff. I mean, it's a wonder how any of us make it. And then where Steve has been doing missing person disappear. Why can't I ever say the name of that show? Missing. Every time I try to say it, it goes blank. It's terrible. But anyway, you're at no loss for missing people. We're still doing stories,
Sadly,
in-depth stories. I know.
yeah,
So where is everybody going? Maybe under the bridge. Maybe
could be.
I think these things. You both have a really good story, and I heard you tell the story, Eric, on another show. And Steve, I know how deep you're into this one, because you've been studying it all your life. And that's the one of little Martin boy that went and
Yes,
got
Yes,
Dennis
and
Martin.
was
Martin.
Yeah,
lost. Yeah. So if you both want to tell a little bit about that, I think it's so important. But I don't want to say anything. But Eric, you told me something. Well, I heard when you were telling the story a little piece of information that I had not heard before, and I wanted to see if Steve had. So both of you tell what you want to tell. Go ahead. Since you're the guest, Eric, you start.
So the Dennis Martin story, I know Steve's talked extensively about it. I put it in the legends part of the book under Bigfoot, because when Dennis Martin went missing, there was another Martin family, no relation to them, that were in the same camp, and they were playing with these kids when he went missing. And then the other Martin family, ended up going on further down the mountain to a different campsite, and they were looking for bears, and they saw what looked like a hairy man or a giant man, with a something red over his shoulder. Well, when Dennis Martin disappeared, he had on a red shirt, and the fact they never found any trace of him, but this hairy man was trying to hide behind trees and things and trying to stay out of view. And they reported it to the FBI, but they didn't take him seriously, I guess. And I saw an interview not too long ago with one of those guys who is grown now, who was one of the little kids that was playing with Dennis Martin, that was talking about how it still affects his family to this day, that they were there when he went missing and stuff. But I put it in the book because of the Bigfoot connection, but also because it's a weird disappearance. So they only found what they thought was one footprint that matched the shoes he was wearing. There was no other trace has ever been found of him.
So obviously something picked him up. That's what I'm thinking.
that's the theory.
Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a channel on YouTube called South Force 10 that he's from Sevierville. He's, I think, in his 70s or something, but he claims that his family members were hired back before it became a national park to go in there and thin out these creatures that are like feral human Bigfoot hybrids. And he claims that's what took Dennis Martin, either to make a meal out of him or for breeding purposes. So frightening to think about, but it's just a strange, strange case. I followed that from day one. Happened Father's Day 1969, all over the local news. I was living in Knoxville, same town Dennis is from, and he was about the same age. He's a few months older than me. But that one just stuck with me, and that started me on my interest in missing people.
It is beyond scary, Lisa, and I'll tell you what. When you guys said red shirt, I don't remember hearing red shirt before. Now that could just be my mind, but maybe it just stuck out this time for me because it means something. So I'm going to go with that because my stuff has just been getting really crazy lately. Abilities, I mean. So when the red shirt was said, I focused on it, and I'm wondering, have you guys ever heard stories of people going missing and a certain color would be taken more than others? Yes?
Red is very common.
Yeah.
Another one that springs to mind is Paula Weldon in the Bennington Triangle here in New England. College student. This happened decades ago, but she was wearing a red coat. And I've covered several cases where people were wearing red. And you'd think, especially in the woods, red would be easy to spot, but people wearing red seem to be taken more than any other color.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's some other weird stuff too, like German descent.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Tends to be a lot more people missing in the woods that are of German descent or are German themselves.
Intelligence, levels of intelligence.
Levels of intelligence, either people that are on the autism spectrum or people that have PhDs are more likely to be
High
taken.
IQs, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that this whole color thing made me start to think, we're starting to hear now about the Bigfoot, and more than one person in my chat last time we talked about this had heard that there's this one guy, and I watch him every once in a while. He has great stories. He mostly reads them off of his emails. But who is it? How to Hunt, something like that. I forget his name. Forgive me. But he showed a picture one guy sent in, and I think he was wearing mirrored glasses. So he feels like something's there, but he can't see anything. That kind of feeling. And I'm just going to go ahead and take pictures because something's up. And he kept feeling that something was not far from him, and he was in a break in the trees, a clearing. And then you've got the tree line all around you, and he's taking pictures. And one of the pictures, when he got home later, he's taking a picture of the wood line, and it's reflected in his glasses, in the mirrored glasses. And it reflects back off the phone screen, and you can see the Bigfoot sitting he's looking right at it. He can't see it. But for some reason that, almost like scrying, I think, where you've got several different layers. It almost like it pierced the veil or the whatever's hiding them. It broke through that. So I thought that was very interesting too. And I'm hearing a lot more of that. And then I started wondering, Steve and I have been talking a lot about the energy with ghosts and different cryptids like Dogmen and Bigfoot it's not the glare I'm talking about. I'm talking about the energy. When they're angry, it's red, that kind of thing. So I'm wondering, there are a lot of animals, and I think this is might be batshit crazy, but there are a lot of animals who have different kinds of colorblind. So I'm wondering, because 3 out of 5 men are colorblind, some level of colorblindness. I had to learn this when I was buying beads, when I was buying flowers and ordering stuff, because most men, most wholesale managers, at the time I was dealing with were men, and I would have to actually give them the number of a color of ribbon. I said, I needed to match this, because I would say, send me this shade, and they would send me something completely different, because they can't, you know what I mean? Unless you go by names, you can't just go by color. So I'm wondering if it has something to do with that, as far as with these Bigfoot or these wild people, who might be a mixture or a hybrid of some sort, and they're just drawn to that color. Because you'd think it would be don't shoot me orange, because there's so damn much of it.
Yeah.
Everybody with the hunters wearing don't shoot me orange, and then, you got these people with red. Oh, there's a red, let me go for that one. So I don't know. I've heard the story of different people, and sometimes it's not the one that's just lagging right behind or just up front. Sometimes it's just, they go behind a bush and they're gone. So you wonder what in the heck is going on with these kids, but I can't imagine what that child went through.
And that was the case with Dennis Martin, because the older kids had sent him up by the adults, because they were going to jump out and scare the adults. And the reason that red shirt comes in the story, and the reason it's something that they remember, is because all the older kids were wearing more muted colors, for like outdoors, and Dennis was the one that was wearing red, the bright color. So the parents would see him if they went to jump out. So they sent him on ahead. So he was right behind the parents when he went behind a bush and poof, gone.
Wow.
And he was the most visible out of all the kids.
Yeah. I keep in mind the colors, listen, kids, keep in mind the idea about the colors. So I think we're on to something with this, with the energy and the eyes and the whole thing, and maybe the color blindness and what appeals to them, because we always have to think of it. It's not what looks to us. It's who else is looking at it, So keep that and, put a pin in that one. All right. This one, go
My
ahead.
shirt says Animal Rescue Corps. They are a rescue organization all across the United States that breaks up puppy mills and takes care of the animals
good.
and gets them adopted out to no-kill shelters.
Very cool. Very cool. Love it. Okay, let's see this one. This one is also a favorite.
Not in the book.
Not in the book, but I brought it up because I asked Steve and I said, you guys can talk about this one because I've got a question. Y'all tell it like you want to. And I've got a question when you're done. It's not a big one, but it's just something I've wondered about for a while.
I love the Bell Witch Cave and the story and all that. The reason it's not in the book is because I try to stay away from stories like this that everybody kind of knows. They've made major motion pictures about this and all that.
Right.
And
right.
so kind of stayed away from that. Also, there's a gentleman named Pat Fitzhugh who I've become friends with, who is the expert on the Bell Witch legend.
Yeah, I know Pat. I've met Pat. His books are excellent.
He's working on his 5th book now on the subject, and he gives talks, and he's actually coming to the Night House to give a talk on April 12th. But he's got 4 books out, and he is the guy to go to on this legend about the family and the cave and the whole everything surrounding the town, everything. So there's so much out there that you can find about the Bell Witch.
I thought the movie absolutely sucked, by the way. Just so you know. I mean, as far as what I know about it, I'm no expert on this, but as far as what I know about it and looking at it through my lenses of abilities and things like that, I'm getting something different. But you guys go ahead.
To me, from talking to Pat, seeing his stuff and my own research, the Bell Witch, as far as the Bell family and the cave, are 2 separate things. The cave has nothing to do with the Bell Witch legend. And Kate Batts gets a bad rap, kind of like the lady at the Conjuring House. She was the lady at the Conjuring House was said to have killed. I forget her name. But Kate Batts gets a bad rap. Kate Batts was actually
Esmeralda, something like that.
Yeah, Kate Batts was actually married, and if there was any land disputes, her husband would have taken care of those. Also, there's so much legend and conjecture around the story that a lot of things that aren't true have been thrown in there. So it's hard to pick out what's true and what's not. It's a fascinating story, but like Andrew Jackson was never at the Bell Farm, not during the haunting. He did have an office in Adams, but whenever they claimed that he was there, he was actually across the country, fighting down in Louisiana or something. So things like that have been added into the story that try to legitimize it, but they're not true. But yeah, something went on with that family. I tend to steer towards mental illness with the daughter being schizophrenic or something like that. Just the way that it's described and the way that they were tortured and how she was tortured. And I think she was kind of right in that prime area of when things like schizoaffective disorder,
like a little PK going on,
and that as well. But she was kind of that age where the mental illnesses start to show up in teenagers and things like that. So, but yeah, definitely interesting story. As far as the cave goes, the cave definitely is haunted. I've been there. I've investigated it. And they do investigations. They're actually starting their investigation up now. Excuse me, coming soon. They do one a month, and some friends of mine run those, Black Wolf Paranormal. But the cave is more of a Native American thing because when you go above the cave, there's burial mounds, and when they put the highway through Adams, widened the highway, and actually made it a highway, they actually dug up some stone box graves. And they reinterred them for a time in the cave itself. And one of them still remains. There's no bones or anything there, but one of the box graves is still in there. They've since been relocated up by the mounds and reburied up there. But they kind of did it with disregard, like they just didn't give a shit because they're just road engineers and stuff. This is back in the 50s, 60s. There was no state archaeologists, nothing like that. So they just kind of dug them up and did whatever the hell they wanted with them. But I know plenty of people who have had issues with the cave. I've heard of many people. I've talked to Candy, who's the head tour guide and the daughter of the owners of the cave, and she grew up there since she was 14. She's in her 30s now, and she can tell you, she can talk to you for days about the experiences. One of the things that she said is definitely true is that people that take stones or anything out of the cave send them back. They get hundreds of packages a year. One of the interesting stories that she told me when she was on my podcast with Pat Fitzhugh, she said when they first started back up doing tours of the cave, right after COVID, a lady and her family came from out of state, and they came to the cave. And when they left the cave after the tour, they went somewhere local to eat. I don't know, it was Cracker Barrel or some local restaurant or something. And they came back after they ate lunch, many hours after they ate lunch. And the lady had her leg in a cast because she took a rock and she fell and broke her leg after they left. And so they came back to bring the rock back that she had taken. And but yeah, Candy said they get many, many packages. She said people will send them right in the driveway. They'll find them in their mailbox. The people actually mail them to the mail where they've taken arrowheads or anything like that they found on the property, because it brings them bad luck. There's other spots around the country that the same thing. The petrified forest out in Arizona, the park rangers get lots of pieces of petrified wood back because people claim the same thing. But yeah,
don't bring it home, folks. Leave it there. Leave it there. Don't take it.
Being a Tennessee native, and
we get thousands of stories.
Yeah, having gone to Adams many times into the cave and stuff, it's two totally separate stories. The cave has really nothing to do with the Bell family whatsoever. It wasn't on their property. It really has nothing to do with them.
They just pulled it together to add to the story. Steve, you want to give your?
I just
gotta go.
Fitzhugh's book. I gotta go. I've got a code brown in progress. So
I understand.
love, peace, and chicken grease.
I love you, baby.
Next time.
Love you, Nick. Eric. Good night, Holden.
Good night.
Daddy duties. Yeah, the thing that was getting with me is what I always picked up, and this was even as a kid when I was hearing or reading in a book about the Bell Witch. I always got this feeling of she wasn't a witch, had nothing to do with her.
Yeah.
That was always the number one, because it's so easy to do that, and I never liked people being accused of stuff they didn't do, and it was so easy to throw off. I do think the father, just for energy wise, not because I've studied it or, energy wise, I think the father was definitely mixed up with something. He may not have even known it, but it came out of the woods. I think this was a mimic, an elemental, and I think it went into that family and really wreaked havoc, and it could have had something to do with the daughter's energy. I think there was more than one thing, but I don't think there was any witch whatsoever involved in this, as far as that goes. And I love that you said, just like the Conjuring, because the same type of thing, it's like we were talking about last night, the gossip, the feathers, it just keeps growing and growing and growing. Before you know it, you moved away from the story. But I think something actually happened.
That's she.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, chat. Oh, great chat. But I think that's the deal. I think there was something going on with the dad, and I don't think it was something like specific. I think in the movie they made him like a pedophile or incest or something along those lines, and they always go that route. There's nothing to say that, but I think he was into something, and I don't know if it was him or like a bloodline thing, but it had something to do with something that was like more like an elemental or an ancient that was a mimic in my book.
Well, and they also had enslaved people. And some of the stories,
the hoodoo
is of them getting attacked by this dogman type creature, and them fighting it off. So different shape-shifting animals attacking them, things like that. So I mean, it could have had something to do with the enslaved people as well, because you really don't know, how John Bell treated them either. Maybe they conjured something or brought something out of the woods, to take care of the family, so
to fight it down, and it wouldn't be the first time.
Yeah, because they were treated that way.
Yep, and it would slowly dry. And the reason I believe that is because of the slow driving, crazy, the separating, the fighting, all of that earmarks everything that I was talking about. So again, I just wanted to emphasize the fact it had nothing to do with the witch, and I didn't think it had anything to do with the cave either. Not an expert, but this was one of Steve's, and I don't know if he knew anything about it. I remember reading about it in the chapter, but I can't quite. This is the Rotherwood Mansion, and it looms up through the tangled dark web of tree branches that line the winding country road. Perched high on a hill overlooking the river. The antebellum house has a tragic history. Rotherwood Mansion, located in Kingsport, Tennessee, was built in 1818, and through its history was acclimated in interesting and supernatural history. What do you think about this one? I love the house.
So the story is very, very interesting with Rotherwood. The daughter of the family who built the house. This is the trope that we're talking about, the bride that's not to be. So they were getting ready for festivities on the day of the wedding. And this was a well-to-do family in this big giant mansion, right? So they're going to try to throw the biggest party, the nicest party they can. They have a beautiful house. And while they're getting ready for the party and they're having people decorate and put out food and all this other stuff, and they're waiting on the guests to arrive, the groom and the groomsmen decide to go down and do a little fishing on the river. And the bride and her family and the groom's family, they're all standing up on the hill watching them because it overlooks the river. Well, the boat that they got into was not big enough for the river. So they get out in the middle of the river and the boat capsizes. And when it turns over, there's some undercurrents and things that are pulling them in under. And the groomsmen all make it to the shore, but the groom does not. The groom drowns. And they don't immediately find his body. Well, he drowns right in front of his bride-to-be and their whole family and everything, whole wedding party. So the wedding is off. And she, of course, is
so the wedding is off.
yeah. She, of course, is distraught.
That's so bad.
She does not off herself immediately, like a lot of the stories would tell you, the jilted bride or whatever. She actually goes on and she goes into this really deep depression for a few years, and she just kind of sits upstairs staring out the window. She finally comes out of her funk and gets married again, and not long after she gets married, the second guy, disease kills him. And so she goes into this depression again. And this is where the story takes two different turns. Yeah, her name is Rowena. And this is where it takes two turns. So one story says that she goes into a depression for a few years again. She actually gets remarried and has a kid. And something happens to this newer husband and kid. And the other story says that she just had the second husband, and after that, the story continues. She decides in her depression that she thinks that she sees her first groom down by the water. And so she goes down to be with him to try to find him, and she can't find him. She ends up drowning. And now they see her, the lady in white, all around the property. And some people have actually reported wet footprints on the steps and the sidewalk coming up to the house from the river. This is one of those stories that don't know if it's just urban legend. The lady Rowena that is claimed to be in the story actually went on to live a fruitful life and moved away from Rotherwood Mansion, and her groom never died in the river. So
just so made up.
Became an urban legend, yeah.
It's one of those things with the gossip, and it just keeps going and going and going. And I think that's one of the things in the paranormal that we really have to do. It's like when you're first investigating, you've got to investigate whether or not the story even has any substance to it, and it's fun to try to, to reverse engineer the stories to try to figure if there is anything. And that's where the history comes in. That's where going around and talking to the townspeople that could have still been there. And that's why it's so important we get these stories down, and I think that's why Eric takes such care. I know I did when I was telling mine, and I know Steve did too. He told them like he was told them. He didn't embellish, he didn't add, because again, when you're going back to research, you want that material that you can get, that you can trust. And this book is one of them. Out of all the stories, what was your favorite? Do you have a favorite? It's hard to pick.
I do. I have two places that are my favorite.
Okay.
One of the things that I found also, like I was talking about with this story, is there's a few different iterations of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I found that with quite a few stories throughout the book. And so probably one of the hardest things was to take those 5 different stories about some of these places and cohesively put them into one story that made sense without embellishing, without me adding anything of mine in there. I mean, there's plenty of embellishment in these stories that you don't have to add anything anyway with a lot of these. I mean, some of these stories are really detailed in particular. So that was one of the issues of difficulty of also trying to make sure that I did the legend and the stories right by mixing different iterations of it, so that the people that actually live there and have heard the stories aren't going to just come out right and say you got it completely wrong.
Right.
I wanted to
That
do
is
justice
hard. That is
to
hard.
to their stories and their heritage. And but there's a lot of haunted. There's a lot of stories from Rothroyd Mansion. A doctor has owned it for the past, I think, 30, 40 years, and she claims she's never had anything happen, but she doesn't doubt that the place is haunted. She has beautifully restored it back to its original.
Nice.
The house was changed by a couple owners. They took off some of the big Italian marble columns and things, and she's put all that stuff back. And
Oh, good.
she's doing great. And so you can't get in there and investigate or anything, but there's plenty of people who've claimed to see the lady in white around there, not just on the property, but also in that area. And like I said, the wet footprints, and there's other stories of people who have been in the house that have experienced things. This doctor lady, she's just one of those people.
Yeah.
Just hasn't experienced anything.
Right. And it could be right there next to her. And that doesn't mean, we say that all the time on the show. It's like somebody will say, well, in the Amityville Horror, and I'm just picking this because it's, you know what I'm talking about, where they'll say, well, the people that are living there now and haven't had any experiences. Well, if you've never learned anything else on this show, that has nothing to do with anything, because the ghost could have went with the last person, or whatever it was in the house followed. It went to the neighbor's house. It went to the next, low hanging fruit down the block, because, it knew it could get something there, whatever it is. There's so many different, there's no definites in this. There's only a few, I would say, definites in the paranormal supernatural that you can bank on, but when you're coming down to what ghosts can and cannot do, the jury's out on a lot of stuff, and I can tell you right now that if this doctor's there, that ghost could be sitting right next to her on the couch. And if she does not have the sight, if she doesn't have the feelings or anything, the abilities of, or this ghost doesn't want her to see her, she's not gonna. So I think what's happening is it's probably another woman in white, or lady anyway. And then this story kind of develops around it. But here's where I get sad, is like, here we're calling this poor ghost, is stuck doing whatever it's doing. And we're not even, we're saying she's somebody else. So that's my thing. That's Eric's thing. And a lot of the people that I know will go in and go, okay, what are we dealing with? No preconceived notion. I mean, we're saying, look at the history, but just because you're talking to a woman in that house doesn't mean it's that one. So always leave that open-minded, because I would be really pissed if I was Bob and I was trying to get attention, and I got excited because somebody was paying attention to me, and now they're calling me Sam and think I was this other guy. Now I got to work through that, to communicate. So maybe stand back a little bit and be open-minded about it. I think that's the smartest route to go.
Yeah. And Brian, it is like the telephone game. And so trying to put together all these stories to basically get the essence of what the legend and the stories are, especially with a place like Rotherwood Mansion and a few others in the book that have these incredible tales of people getting revenge. There's one in the book it's all about revenge, because the guy was a horrible slave owner.
I read that one. Yeah. All the stories are so good. I thought it was also fascinating, just the regular details about how Tennessee is broke up into 3 parts. Tell a little bit about that. Now, that was something that was done early. What went on with that? Was it actually almost considered separate states, or they were commissioned differently? What's going on?
It actually was 2 different states to begin with. The half of Middle Tennessee and East Tennessee was actually going to be called Franklin, after Benjamin Franklin.
Okay.
And briefly, the town of Greenville in East Tennessee, kind of up in the Tri-Cities area toward Virginia and North Carolina, was actually the the state capital. And but then it ended up becoming the territory it is. And I think Tennessee is the only one that has legal grand divisions that they're legally named in the law. And so what that means is that West Tennessee is defined as, from the Mississippi River is the border to the west, and the Tennessee River is the border to the east. And between those 2 rivers, that's West Tennessee. Between the Tennessee River and the Cumberland Plateau and the Cumberland Divide is Middle Tennessee. That's the geographic. And then, of course, you have the Cumberland Plateau to the Appalachian Mountains, and that's East Tennessee. But the reason they did that was because of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, all right, well, we'll go to each division once per quarter. So they would rotate. So they'd have the Supreme Court in East Tennessee here in those cases, one for 3 months, and then they would move to Middle Tennessee, then West Tennessee, and then they go back. And so it was a court thing to be easier for the court to move around, but they had to have some sort of divisions. So they said, all right, well, let's just use these huge landmarks that Mother Nature gave us, and they define them by law. And so that also breaks up our judicial districts. They're still broken up for the Supreme Courts of Tennessee by those grand divisions. So the county, some of the counties may be half in one Supreme Court district and half in the other.
Wow.
They have to go to that appropriate court. Yeah.
Wow. And that's just so, I'd never heard of that before, or something was broke up like that, but I can see, when everything was coming together, I mean, everything's changed so much since the colonies, but you can kind of see how it would happen. And I just thought it was neat the way you did it. And then in the book, it's broke up, you've got East, Middle, and, West Tennessee. It's really nice. And you included everybody. I really love the way you did it. Now, your favorite, the one that intrigued you the most, there's a couple in there, like I said, Steve said it too, could be a whole book.
Yeah. This is one of them. This is one of my favorites. It's a Cherry Mansion in Savannah, Tennessee. Okay. And Cherry Mansion overlooks Shiloh. It was actually built on the bluff overlooking the river and the battlefield. It was constructed around 1830 and is a wedding gift to the daughter and Mr. Robinson's daughter and her husband, William Cherry. And so they named it Cherry Manor because that was their last name. But it was in the Cherry family until 1935 from 1830. So over 100 years, it was in the same family. The interesting history about the house, and the reason that it could be a whole book written about it, is that Ulysses S. Grant, it was his headquarters during the Battle of Shiloh. And they don't know, this story they think is true, but they can't prove it. But when the Battle of Shiloh broke out on the morning in 1862, he was actually eating breakfast at the house. And they heard the first cannon fire happening at the battle. So him and his generals had to rush down the hill to the battlefield.
Oh, wow.
During the middle of eating breakfast. They had just sat down and they were interrupted by cannon fire in the distance.
Better move.
The Confederates had launched a surprise attack they weren't expecting. And so, but they had to rush down and do their duty. There were 2 generals who died in the house during the Battle of Shiloh. When they both got injured, they were brought back. And these were actually right-hand men of Grant's. And they were brought back to the house to try to save them, and they both died. Interesting story about one of them is that his wife, who was, I believe, in Virginia, it all kind of runs together after a while.
I understand.
General Wallace.
Bless your heart. I know you feel miserable. I know you do. I'm going to get you out of here. When you're done with this, I know. When you're done with telling us this, I'm going to get you out of here. I'm going to play a ghost story for everybody.
It's all good. General Wallace, his wife, he was one of the General Ferguson and General Wallace are the ones that died in the house. General Wallace's wife had a premonition that her husband was going to get killed at the Battle of Shiloh, and she knew where he was because he was a general, so he was in communication all the time with his family. Mm-hmm. She traveled day and night without sleeping to get to him. When she got to Cherry Manor, he was on his deathbed, but she actually got to say goodbye to him.
Oh man, that's so sad.
Let's see. Yeah, she was by his side until he died a few days later. So she actually got to
be with him.
Yeah, and his apparition is still seen in that bedroom window where he passed away.
In the bedroom window. Okay.
But the fact that she had this premonition and traveled, I believe from Virginia is where they were from, 3 or 4 days and nights without sleeping. Because the premonition was so strong. Mm-hmm. So that's just one of the side stories.
Mm-hmm. That's powerful. That's really powerful. It really is. I mean, love can endure so many things, but there's so many, especially out of just the Civil War, stories like this, And I mean, gosh, you go all the way back to the Revolutionary War. So many of the signers of the Declaration of Independence had stories like this. So that's amazing, And now did she leave? Yeah. Did she
Yeah.
leave and go
Yeah, she
back?
ended up
Okay.
getting back home. They had kids and stuff. That is a true story that is documented. That is not legend. That is not folklore. That is a true story.
Mm,
They've seen Civil War soldiers around the house, the outside of the house, like they're still guarding because the big General Grant was there, so
right. Right.
a lot of soldiers down there. All kinds of hauntings. One of the more interesting stories back in the 70s, it has this 2-story porch on the front of the house with the big columns and
Okay.
the big
Yeah. Yeah.
antebellum home. In the 70s, the owners, it's been a privately owned home since it was built. And the owners back in the 70s, they had some friends over, and about 6 or 7 of them were sitting on the front porch after dinner. And it was a summer evening, so it was, didn't get dark till late. They're having cocktails after dinner. They see this man. Now the house is up on a bluff, so the driveway kind of comes up and winds around, and it winds right in front of the road, winds right in front of the house, and there's stairs that go down to the road and where their mailbox is. Well, there's also a historical marker there. And they see this man dressed in a suit and top hat with a gray beard, and he's walking up the road toward them and toward the house. And he stops at the historical marker, and they watch him for a good 2-3 minutes. It looks like he reads the marker, takes his hat off, and poof, disappears right in front of them.
Wow.
And 6 or 7 people saw this.
Mm,
6 or 7 witnesses that were there. Um, and
that's
so
amazing. That's
yeah, and that's the
amazing.
only time that guy was ever seen. But they took it that he was coming to pay his respects
Mhm.
to the men who died in the Battle of Shiloh because he took his hat off, but he just
Yeah.
disappeared, just poof in the thin air
Out
right
of
in front of them.
respect.
Yeah,
Read about it. And I often wondered that, you go into these battlefields like Gettysburg or any of them, and you have the historical placards and everything, and you're standing there reading them. And there's been so many times where I was standing there reading something like that, and I felt somebody right behind me, like reading along with me,
yeah,
and I'll just start talking to him. It's like, man, y'all were busy here. You did some brave thing, and I will say stuff like that. And, you're not forgotten, and I'm running my big mouth to keep this from happening again, and that kind of thing, and just letting them know that, kind of what's going on now. What you
yeah,
did wasn't in vain. We're still talking about it. We're still here. We're still respecting it. And I think that you can kind of feel the energy ease a little bit. So I absolutely go along with that thought that he was coming by and reading the placard and just
yeah,
remembering, and I think that's kind of stuff goes on all the time. And I think we miss it. We're so busy. We're about our day, and we just don't think about, if you want to get into, stuff like time is linear and everything is happening at the same time. And I certainly
yeah,
don't understand all that, but I can tell you that these people come back. And when you remember them, they know it. When you're talking about them, they know it. You've gotten multiple EVPs at the Night House. Before I let you go, I wanted to say that when you start talking to me, which a lot of times I have to text with Eric, because when he gets on the phone, we connect that energy, everything just comes flooding in, and it's so wild. We just
yeah,
have this connection. But we have one person, I want to be very careful. I don't want to say the name, and
yeah.
don't you say it, but our hallway person. I have a feeling that now this was this morning and yesterday, because I was listening to some of your other podcasts and things, and your energy comes through when you start talking about a Night House. And I got the message loud and clear that he's not hanging out in the hallway as much anymore. He's somewhere else.
Yeah.
And the reason for that was because somehow someone got through to him. I think it was two separate people over multiple times, really caring with good intent, that finally got through to him why he was going up that hallway toward that front door, continuously staying there. And he made the decision to not do that as much anymore. He's not done, but
Yeah.
he's getting there. And I was just like, yes. I was so happy when I felt that. Does any of that ring true to you?
Yeah, because I've been talking to him a lot more instead of ignoring him. Because our last conversation, he said he didn't like me ignoring him, but it was helping him. But now he
Mhm.
didn't want to be ignored anymore. So I talk to him directly now and say hi
Nice.
to him directly. And I ask
You're
him where.
easing his pain. You're easing his pain.
I also ask him where he's at in the house now, and that just without me knowing that he's moved on, I just started doing that out of nowhere. Of like, hey, where are you at? So and so.
you know,
Mhm.
and I'll feel him. He'll put his energy out to me, so I know where he's at. But yeah,
That's
he
so
moves
cool.
around a lot more. He's still
I'm
in the
so
parlor.
glad.
He's still in the parlor a lot.
Mhm.
But if
But
he's
he's
not at
not
his home,
repeating
yeah,
that, like,
yeah,
I don't know how to describe it, because when I connected into it, this is him coming through you hitting me. Okay. So it's diluted. So it's not as straight as if I was talking directly to the guy. He's almost comfortable enough to ride. Now don't get this wrong. He's not a jumper.
yeah, yeah,
At least not yet. But he's riding on Eric's energy. He's come so familiar with it. So,
yeah.
and he's actually, I almost heard him clearly say, I'm listening. I'm listening. And it's and somebody is saying, are you listening to me? Are you listening?
That's
Listen to
me.
this.
That's
you
me.
know and
Can you
and
hear
he's
me?
like,
Are you
I'm
listening? Yeah,
listening. I'm listening.
yeah,
And I just love the fact that his energy felt so much lighter. It wasn't that heavy dark brownish kind of feel, grays and stuff like that. It has more colors in it. So whatever you're doing, it's doing great. He's
yeah,
going to take a little bit more time, because he doesn't have. He's got a great mindset. Things are very clear to him, but they're only in patches. He's only seeing things in flashes and patches, and it keeps going back to something earlier, not kid, more teenager to early 20s. That was really the issue, and I
he
don't know how to explain that.
he didn't have a great life, from what I understand, and not because of
Okay.
him, because of other people.
Yeah.
Um, he 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 was a pretty meager guy, and he got picked on a lot.
Mhm.
Even at work, he got bullied. He was a
Mhm.
whistleblower. He was a whistleblower about about a person stealing money, and nobody
Okay.
believed him because they thought she's just the greatest thing ever, and she'd never do that. And then come to find out, 5 years later, they found out, yeah, she did. She stole a lot of
Mhm.
money, and she went to jail. But he caught a lot of flack for that. And then
Mhm.
also, he had a girlfriend who was murdered, and
Mhm.
the murder's never been
Mm.
solved.
Okay.
It was covered up, believed to be covered up by the mayor of a separate town because they believe his son did it, and so it all got swept under the.
Mm. So okay, that's a big anchor. Do you know how old he was in there? Was he in his 20s?
He was older than that. He was in his
Was he?
20s when he was a whistleblower with that whole
Okay.
thing.
Because
But
I'm
there's also
getting
other things that happened too.
that must have been very profound
His
for
dad
him.
passed away suddenly of a heart attack,
Mm.
very young, in his
Mhm.
50s. Had a widowmaker. Um, yeah, he had a lot of tragedy
Yeah.
in his life
And
that
and this is
he wasn't responsible for. Yeah,
this is what I mean by when I say that we are accountable. Not only do what we do ourselves, but we do to other people, because this guy was so kind of I don't know how to express it. I'm getting beat down, beat down. So now, if you will, when you feel like you're ready to say it, the next phase, I want you to tell him, Cisco says, pick your head up,
yeah,
pick your head up. And if you can think of anything that he could be proud of, like, you did this, you survived through this mess, you're a warrior, you survived all that stuff. That didn't take you down. That's not what got, that kind of thing. Let
yeah,
him know some of the things that he moved through were actually good life lessons, and he moved through it, because we're going to start picking up his energy, because he can go see that young girl.
yeah.
You see what I mean?
And the neighbor described to him, because the neighbor's been there long enough to have known him,
Mhm.
and he described him as, after all that happened, especially with the girlfriend, because he got a divorce and all this other stuff, and then he didn't date for a long time, and then when he did, she got murdered, and they were very much in love, going to get married,
Mhm.
and the neighbor said after that he just was,
That was it.
life
Broke
just
him.
treated him. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and his colors started to turn dark and everything else. Well, I'll tell you, honey, it is fascinating. I'm so glad you did it. I know you've been talking about doing a book for a long time.
yeah,
It's no small undertaking. Every word, every letter, the font, you've put so much into this. I mean, this is a proper book, folks. This is, everything, every picture is accredited. Everything is, it is a proper book. I highly recommend to go get it. It's a great read. Spring's coming, go to the park, read this, go if you're close by. Why don't you, instead of doing these big things that cost an awful lot of money, you know what I mean, like going to one of
yeah,
these theme parks or something else, pick a couple places and go visit with your family and talk about real life events that have happened to people that walked before us. And listen, in 50 years, they're going to be talking about you. You know, what are they going to say about you? So if you can teach the kids or take the family out and do this, I'm with Eric. I'm not big on camping either, because I don't know how, you know, that material is going to stop a bear. We said that.
Yeah,
It's like, what are you thinking?
that's
You know,
right.
what are you
Yeah.
thinking? Yeah, it doesn't. You know, I've seen enough stories of Bigfoot, dogmen, and everything else. I mean, you're just a regular hungry mountain lion, or you know,
Right.
whatever is going to get
Yeah.
you. But so do something like that and go visit a couple of these places, and you know, tell your kids, teach the grandkids about history, because my gosh, we're living it right now. What's it going to say about you? You know, honey,
Yeah.
thank you so much. What do you want to
Thank you.
say leaving out here? The show, are you still doing? You're not doing as
Yes.
many podcasts? It's still
Yeah.
going? Tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about that.
The Unseen Paranormal, I kind of taking a different approach. The format will be a little different. It's coming back March 26th, and it'll be
Okay.
out every other week, every other Wednesday. And the way we're changing the show up a little bit, I'm still going to do one-on-one interviews peppered in
Hmm.
a little bit, but I'm taking on two different co-hosts, not on the same show. And my friend Sin Schrader Hill and my friend Austin Lawrence, who've been
I love
investigators for
Sin.
many years.
Yeah,
Yeah,
send her my love. Send her my love.
yeah, she edited my book, so yeah, I love her.
Is she,
She's awesome. Yeah,
yeah, she's
I did
awesome.
the forward in one of hers, and so yeah,
She's got such a happy energy. She's got a smile that lights up the room. She really does.
right.
And I think she's really got a deep sense for this genre. I really, you know, like we're all born for this, you know. Some of us ignore it and go on to do other things, and we, you know, leave it in the dust. But I'm so glad she's in it. So
Yeah.
tell her I said hi.
I will. So we're picking a different topic in the paranormal to do deep dives in every week that we have
Nice.
in the show. So one show she'll be on as co-host, the next show Austin will be on as my co-host, and sometimes we're both going to pick different topics that the other one doesn't know what we're talking about.
Mhm.
So kind of surprise each other.
I love those.
But it's going to be a lot of storytelling of eyewitness accounts of your deep dives into dogmen and all kind of stuff, and to where I don't get in the weeds too much or go down too many rabbit holes when I do interviews. This allows us to kind of get in the weeds. And when me and Sin recorded the other day, the first episode, it's an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah.
So
It's just had
that's
so much
pretty long
fun.
format. Yeah, yeah, and it was a
Yeah,
blast.
you just get in there and you just tell the stories, and wherever it takes you. You know, I love those. You know, I'm going to be doing some on my Rumble channel. I'm trying to do other things. I got demonetized on Facebook because I'm not really a big rule follower, and it's hard to put Cisco in the box. But you know, so they pulled all that, and I'm like, okay, well, I wasn't doing it for that anyway. I'm going to go ahead and add Rumble, and I added X, and I added Facebook, and so the thing is on Rumble, I was trying to do things on the middle of the night because I cannot do a live show where I'm talking. There's too much noise going on where I am during the, you know, other days.
Yeah.
So I had to find something I could do where I could be in the chat. We could all connect. So I started on Rumble. As long as you're not monetizing them, they'll allow you to show a movie. So you have a watch party. So I've been pulling up all the movies that I've always used as a reference, you know, in different stories, like in Ghost or whatever. But if people haven't seen it, they don't know what you're referencing. So now I can do that. And I'm really happy about that. And I'm going to add a late night Saturday show just to go off the rails. So I'm having so much fun because I got like you and I have talked many a times. I have to get into true crime just to cleanse my palate of the paranormal, because when you've read the books you want to read and you've interviewed the people that you want to interview and you've had them back 3 or 4 times, and it's wonderful. I'd have them back 100 times. But you know, people get busy and people, you know, and then you read the 3 books and the person gets sick, and the next thing you know, they're not doing it anymore or whatever.
Yeah.
So this takes time. This takes a lot of our free time to put together, you know, the shows and stuff like that. So you have to add things to keep you stimulated, so you're not just phoning it in. And I think that's one of the reasons we change up our formats and stuff like that too. I think that's a good thing, baby. So you go get some rest. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Congratulations on the book. Thank you for thinking of me, and thank you for helping the ones that are in your home, because you're doing good there. You really are. And
There's family in the house.
yeah.
Like I've always owned it. So,
Now I'm gonna say, I bet you Raj has had a few things where he's like, what the heck was that? You know?
he's had stuff all the time.
I know. What the heck? But he's when I think about him and I think about this, I see more smiles now. It's almost like a knowing is there. You know what I mean? And I love that. I love it. And I just love him too. So there you go. Go give him a hug. He might not want to get near you right now. That's okay.
He's
And I'm
got
going to
it
show
too,
he does too. We'll get better. Raw garlic salsa. Eat raw garlic salsa till it comes out your ears, and this will be over in 24, 48 hours.
yeah,
I
I've been
promise.
eating elderberry too. So
Elderberry's not bad. You can mix the two. But you're talking about that bioluminescent green stuff. That's kind of like garlic. It kills bubonic plague. So breathe the steam and eat the raw garlic. Don't cook it. And I love you very much. Go take care
you
of
too, darling.
yourself.
Thank you.
Good night, baby.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you, Eric. Bye. Get the book. Good night, honey. Okay. Fantastic. So Steve may not be here next Monday. I don't know if I've said this. Because their Stocktons are moving. They're going to their new abode. They're moving on up to the east side. They're going to have a wonderful time. I love where they're going. I love what these beautiful people are going to be surrounded with. A lot of history, a little more quiet, a little less hubbub. And I think it's great. It's going to be great for Holden, and I couldn't be happier for them. So we're going to give him a couple of nights to get packed and moved and settled and all that. You got a baby, 3/4 of the stuff they're going to be moving or belong to Holden, I guarantee you, because you know what little babies need. They need everything. They got the bassinet, the play set, the cradle, the playpen. So much of the car seat, this seat, there's so much stuff. And I just think that, it's absolutely fantastic. Everything that's happened. I couldn't be happier for my friend. We've known each other a very long time, and we've gotten each other over some really tough times. And I can just tell you right now, don't ever give up. Don't ever give in. Don't ever let your dreams go. Don't ever stop fighting. Don't ever stop trying to take action to change your situation or take action to make a situation better or to make yourself happier. Don't ever overlook those opportunities. Eat the good cookie. Okay? Treat yourself well. Self-care, like I said last night. Okay? Now, last night we talked about something else, but I didn't get a chance to show. I can't believe I rattled on for 3 hours last night. I had a good time. We had a good time. So I wanted to tell you this little story. I hope it doesn't shut down again, but I'm going to give it a shot here. Hang on one second. This is really good. I love the way they did it. Get a little surprise. Loved the way they did it. Let me see if I can find it again. I'm still here. Trying to sort it out of all this. If the thing didn't dump on me earlier, it would have been easier. Is this it? I think this is it. Oh, it is. Oh, this is such a treat. Okay. Pull up the right thing. Okay. I'm so excited you get to see this. Okay. So last night, what were we talking about? We were talking about eavesdropping and how eavesdropping, the thing is this. A lot of times you're going to overhear something that's going to hurt you, or you're going to overhear something that you might be taken wrong. We talked all about that last night. With Chloe, this is the Myrtle Plantation, and Chloe was a slave, and she was an in-the-house slave. And she would listen at the door when her boss was in there talking to different people. I can't remember if there was a lot of military going in and out of there or what, but I know he was a businessman. I can't quite place what he was. I know he was up there. I can't remember if he was in the military or not, but either way, he was kind of a mean dude. And she got caught listening, eavesdropping, and they cut her ear off as a punishment to teach her not to do it again. And she did it again. And this time she had overheard what she thought was going to be, that she was going to be traded and left. So she came up with a plan to make herself more valuable or needed more. And all this resulted from being in a bad situation and trying to do the best you can to, with what you had. And eavesdropping was one of the things. If you ever got caught doing that, I mean, we've all seen all the shows, the people listening with the glass on the wall and, listening against the door and almost getting caught, those kind of things. Listening on the phone. We used to have, when I was a kid, we had a party line, I think twice. I know we moved to Deep Creek, Virginia for a while, and there they had a party line too. And people would pick it up and listen to your conversations and stuff. I always thought it was creepy. There's just something sinister about it. There no good can come from it. If it feels bad and it makes you feel bad doing it, it's probably not a good idea. And last night I wanted to finish with a ghost story to try to, kind of put an end cap on it. So I thought I would give it to you tonight. It's only about 9 minutes long. So if you want to stay and listen to it, I highly recommend it because I just love the way this person tells the story. So without further ado, I will share with you, if our screen does not go black. Here we are.
Night has fallen, and the moon is a glowing golden orb in the black sky. See how it shines on the dark back roads of America, and on one road in particular. Come with us, and we'll take a walk down the moonlit road, for the night is waiting, and the moon is full.
The Moonlit Road presents Episode 50, The Slave Girl, written by Craig Dominy and told by Veronica Bird.
When folks think about the American South, one image that always comes to mind is the old plantation house. Before the Civil War devastated the South, the plantation homes were about the closest thing America had to magical European palaces. But what some folks don't know, or maybe don't care to think about, is that many of these plantations were built on the backs of slaves. These slaves toiled under the whip of the white plantation owners, harvesting cotton and sugarcane for days, weeks, months, and years on end. Some were literally worked to death, only to be replaced like an old shoe when the next boatload of captured slaves came into port. So while the plantations may have been wealthy palaces to some, they were places of misery and death for many others. So it should come as no surprise that many of the plantation homes remaining in the South are rumored to be haunted. This is the story of one of those houses. Back in the 1800s, many plantations were located north of New Orleans along the banks of the Mississippi River. These plantations fueled the national economy with cotton and sugarcane, and their owners were some of the richest men in America. Myrtle's Plantation, located a few miles outside of St. Francisville, Louisiana, was one of these homes. It was a beautiful example of Old South antebellum architecture. Upon arrival, a visitor would be greeted with the magical sight of Spanish moss swaying in the breeze, sweeping wide verandas with ornamental ironwork, and the sweet smells of pink-blossomed myrtle trees. Inside, one would find a lavishly decorated home in the Gothic style, with ornate plasterwork, European antiques, winding staircases, and sparkling crystal chandeliers. Lurking behind all of this beauty and grandeur, though, hid a very sinister history, which many believe started with a slave girl named Chloe. At that time, Myrtle's Plantation was owned and operated by Judge Clark Woodruff and his wife, Sarah Matilda. The Woodruffs had 2 young daughters, with a 3rd child on the way. The judge was well respected in the community as a man of integrity and a staunch upholder of the law. Now, although he would uphold the law at any cost, his morals and values left a lot to be desired. You see, he held a dirty secret. Judge Woodruff was a compulsive womanizer. Whenever he had the opportunity, the judge would sneak around and have relations with his female slaves. Chloe, a slave of mixed blood who served as governess to the Woodruff children, eventually became the target of his advances. Chloe was disgusted with the thought of the judge having his way with her. But she knew that if she didn't, he would probably send her back out into the fields to toil with the other slaves. You see, working in the big house was as close to freedom as a slave girl could expect at that time. So Chloe did what she had to do. But after a while, Chloe began to suspect that the judge was getting tired of her and would soon be looking for a new lover. Terrified of being sent back to the field, Chloe began eavesdropping on the family's conversations to find out if her fears were true. Well, one day, the judge caught her, and he was so enraged that he sliced off one of her ears. And from that day forward, Chloe wore a green turban around her head to hide her shameful wound. With the judge now furious at her, Chloe knew she had to do something fast to prove her worth to the family. But what? Her opportunity came one day when she was directed to help set up a birthday party for the Woodruff's eldest daughter. The judge was away, and his wife and daughters planned on celebrating the birthday by eating cake in the dining room. Chloe came up with a plan. She crept outside and picked one of the oleander plants growing beside the house. She knew that the plant contained a small amount of poison, which she secretly added to the birthday cake. She figured if she made the family sick, she could nurse them back to health and prove herself invaluable to the family. She cared for the children and was careful only to add enough poison to make them slightly ill. As the family ate the tainted birthday cake, Chloe soon found out she had made a terrible mistake. One by one, they dropped their utensils and began writhing and moaning in pain and agony. Chloe helped them to their beds and tried desperately to save them, but it was too late. Soon the young girls, their mother, and the unborn child were dead. As word spread throughout the plantation, the other slaves were terrified that the judge would take his anger at Chloe out on them. To save their own hides, they knew they had to do something to prove their loyalty to the master. So one night, a lynch mob grabbed Chloe while she slept and hanged her from one of the oak trees. After she died, they cut her down, weighted her body with rocks, and tossed her into the Mississippi River. The judge promptly sealed off the dining room, and he never used it again. In later years, the plantation house was turned into a bed and breakfast, with many visitors attracted to its beauty and Old South charm. But visitors and future owners alike would soon discover they were not in the house alone. One day, one of the new owners of Myrtle's plantation snapped a photo in front of the house. When the picture was developed, she could see a shadowy figure standing near the veranda, her head wrapped in what appeared to be a turban. At night, some of the guests reported hearing restless footsteps wandering the halls of the house. Others said they were jolted from their sleep by a black woman in a green turban who lifted up the mosquito netting around their beds as if looking for something. Soon, other strange incidents were reported in the house. Some guests claimed to have seen the images of small children in the hallway mirrors. Others heard their names called out from distant rooms, only to find they were in the house alone. And others spotted two playful little girls in white dresses playing in the hallways, peeking through the windows, bouncing on the beds, and even swinging from the chandeliers. Is the mysterious woman in the green turban the ghost of Chloe, searching for the judge who caused her such grief? Are the mysterious little girls the ghosts of the Woodruff children, forever trapped in the home where they died? We'll leave that up to you to decide. Or better yet, next time you're in Louisiana, spend a night in the Myrtles plantation near St. Francisville and find out for yourself.
That concludes this tale from the Moonlit Road. Be sure to visit our website at themoonlitroad.com to find out more about our stories and let us know how we're doing. The Moonlit Road is produced and directed by Craig Dominy, recorded and soundscaped by Henry Howard in beautiful Stone Mountain, Georgia. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
What in the heck? Okay. Maybe we're out of here. Good night, everybody. I'm just gonna shut her down. I love you guys. If you can hear me, good night. Unbelievable.